All right, let's talk about something that a lot of guys are feeling, but maybe not talking about. We're going to dive into what really happens to an Indian man's body between the ages of 40 and 60. For so many, it feels like a switch just gets flipped overnight. We're going to pop the hood and show you exactly what's going on with the engine. I mean, does that sound familiar? That feeling that your body just isn't playing by the same rules it used to? Well, let me tell you, you are not imagining it. There is a very real and very specific reason this decade feels like such a massive turning point. And here's the key thing to get right away. This isn't just some vague idea of, oh, I'm just getting older. Nope. What you're experiencing is a predictable biological story. It has a clear cause, a clear chain reaction, and you know what? That means there's a different playbook you need to use to manage it. So, to really understand this story, we have to start at the very beginning, with a fundamental biological fact, a unique predisposition that really sets the stage for everything else that's about to happen. And this is the core concept right here, the South Asian phenotype. So what does that mean? It means that even if the scale says your weight is totally fine or your BMI is in that healthy range, you're more likely to have a higher percentage of body fat, and specifically the really dangerous kind of internal fat that wraps around your organs. This right here is our ground zero. Okay, so where does the trouble begin? Let's talk about the very first domino to fall in this whole metabolic cascade. You start losing muscle. And we have to stop thinking about muscle as just being for strength or for looks. Its job as a metabolic engine is way, way more important. Yeah, there's a technical name for it. It's called sarcopenia, and it's this slow kind of invisible process that kicks in after you turn 40. You lose about 0.5% of your muscle every single year. Now, that might not sound like a lot, right? But do the math. Over a decade, that's a huge hit to your body's most important metabolic tissue. And why is this such a massive deal? Well, two big reasons. First, think of your muscle mass as a giant sink for all the sugar from your food. It's supposed to soak up almost 90% of it after you eat. As that sink gets smaller, the sugar has nowhere to go. Second, the little power plants inside your muscle, the mitochondria, they just get old and tired. By your early 50s, they're about 40% less efficient at burning fuel. So you've got this double whammy, a smaller sink and a drain that's partially clogged. So you've got to ask the question, if that fuel, that sugar, can't get into the muscle, where does it end up? Well, this leads us to the next link in the chain. Your body starts storing that extra energy as a particularly nasty type of fat, one that basically turns into a 24/7 inflammation factory. And it is so important to understand the difference here. We're not talking about the fat you can pinch on your belly. That's called subcutaneous fat. We're talking about visceral fat. This is the bad stuff, the internal fat that packs itself around your liver, your kidneys, your intestines. And it's not just sitting there, it's chemically active, constantly pumping out inflammatory signals. Now, this is where things get really nasty. This visceral fat creates this vicious downward spiral. See, lower testosterone levels tell your body to store more of this visceral fat. But then the fat itself produces an enzyme that literally eats your testosterone and converts it into estrogen. So now you have even lower testosterone, which tells your body to store even more fat. And you can see how the cycle just feeds on itself, getting worse and worse. And believe it or not, it gets even worse. Because of where this fat is located, it drains all its inflammatory junk directly into your liver's blood supply. They call it the portal effect. Seriously, just picture having a toxic waste factory sitting right upstream from your city's water supply, just dumping gunk into it 24/7. That's what's happening to your liver. Okay, so we've talked about all this internal chaos. But how does it actually feel day to day? Well, it shows up as two things you probably know well. A biological clog that you feel is just being tired all the time, and a system-wide signal that you see as high blood pressure. That clog, it has a name: insulin resistance. All that inflammation basically jams the locks on your muscle cells. Insulin is the key that's supposed to open the door and let fuel in, but the key doesn't work anymore. So you can have tons of sugar floating around in your blood, but your cells are literally starving for energy. And what does that mean for you? It means you feel wiped out for no reason. It's that brain fog, those awful energy crashes you get after a meal. So what does your body do when it senses this clog? It basically panics. Your nervous system kicks into overdrive, trying to force everything to just work harder. And at the same time, that physical bulk of visceral fat can actually start to squeeze your kidneys. So you've got your nervous system on high alert and your kidneys getting compressed, and boom, that's what drives your blood pressure up. Okay, so that's the problem. I know, it sounds like a lot, this whole domino effect. But here's the good news. Understanding the system is the key to fixing it.
So now let's pivot. Let's talk about the solution, the new game plan. And we're going to use 3 really simple ways of thinking to completely change your perspective.
First model, you've got to stop seeing your muscles as just for lifting things. From now on, see them for what they are, a sink for the sugar you eat. And after 40, that sink is shrinking every single year. If you don't actively work to keep it big and deep, every single meal you eat is going to cause an overflow. And that overflow is toxic fat spilling right into your organs. Okay, model number 2, that apple shape, that belly fat. Let's reframe that completely. It is not just some stored energy. Think of it as a rogue organ that has set up shop in your body. It is an active, hormone-producing factory that is literally eating your testosterone for breakfast and pumping poison straight into your liver. When you see it like that, the urgency really changes, doesn't it? And finally, model number 3. Let's change how we look at high blood pressure. In this situation, it's often not the real problem. It's a symptom. It's your body's way of screaming for help. It's like your body is revving its engine in neutral, just desperately trying to burn through all the fuel that's clogging up the system. It's a distress signal from a struggling metabolism. So once you start thinking with these new models, your priorities just totally flip. What matters right now is mechanical loading. That means strength training to save and grow that muscle sink. It means making sure you get enough protein to actually build the muscle. And it means watching your waistline in inches, because that's a direct measure of that dangerous visceral fat. The old games of just slashing calories or obsessing over the number on the scale, they can actually backfire and make you lose even more muscle. And with this new understanding, we can just bust some really dangerous myths. Myth 1, my weight is normal, so I must be healthy. Wrong. The skinny fat risk is real. Myth 2, high blood pressure is just about my heart or too much salt. Often, it's a metabolic fire alarm going off first. And myth 3, walking is enough exercise. Look, walking is great, but it won't save the specific muscle you need to keep that glucose sink open. For that, you gotta lift heavy things. All right, let's put it all together. If you remember nothing else from this, remember this. Here's the whole story, this 60-second version. It is a simple 4-step domino effect. Step 1, your main fuel tank, your muscle, starts to shrink. Step 2, the fuel you eat has nowhere to go, so it spills over and gets stored as dangerous internal fat. Step 3, that fat becomes its own little chemical factory, pumping out inflammation. And step 4, your body panics, and the system pressure, your blood pressure, starts to rise. It is a clear, predictable cascade. But listen, this right here is the single most important takeaway. This is not a one-way street. This is not some irreversible fate. The entire process starts with that shrinking fuel tank. And that is the one thing you have almost total control over. The power to stop and reverse this whole chain reaction starts with one thing: rebuilding your body's most powerful metabolic engine. It starts with rebuilding your muscle.